Hello boys and girls, welcome to BenchART. I'm for Classic, and for today what I do every year it is Back for Blood, a game developed by Turtle Rock Studios, and it is using Unreal Engine 4. So for the settings I will be using 1080p high settings, but honestly you can play at epic or maximum settings if you want. But still I have decided to go with high, because my average frame rate and 1% low it is higher than obviously playing at maximum settings, with no frame drops below 60 while using epic or max. Despite my average was 89 and my minimums it was 63, there was still some small blips below 60 frames per second when a lot of action do appear. But if you want to play at 1440p, it is also possible, especially if you go with median settings. You can expect that 11% of the time of my tests it was lower than 60 frames per second, so the majority of the time of the game it was playable above 60, and my minimums it was about around 49-50, so it is pretty good result if you want to play at 1440p. Median settings it is pretty good, although as soon as you go to the high settings and ultra settings you can start to have an experience. The high settings mostly in between 45 to 60, and the maximum pretty much above 40. It's still very playable, but for the type of game that you will be playing multiplayer, and since you have this type of graphic card, I would recommend you to target 60 frames per second, which in my case 1080p high settings or ultra it is good, or 1440p median settings. So the requirements for the GTX 970 and the RX 590, it is 1080p high settings. I do agree with them, honestly. Alright, so performance wise, I think the game runs pretty good. Yes, there is some small frame time inconsistencies going on with the X12. It kind of solves itself if you lock the game to 60 frames per second. This seems to be a DX12 issue probably, but it is usual in Unreal Engine this stuff to happen. Unfortunately, it is the kind of issue that is present in the majority of the games, is having frame time issues with the game. But if you never notice any kind of that stuff in Unreal Engine game, you won't be noticing on this game. So the game runs very good, and the thing that I like the most about this game is that the differences in between the maximum settings, the high settings, and the median settings are really small. I feel that if you play at median settings, for example, you won't be losing anything regarding graphics quality, because the quality it is mostly there. And honestly, I didn't notice the difference. I played my benchmark pass. It was on the first campaign and the third level. This one is the fourth level, but for the benchmarking purposes, I did use the third level because it's more demanding. And I didn't notice the difference, honestly. Yes, if I probably put a screenshot side by side, I would notice the difference, and I could pinpoint I don't know, a piece of grass that is visible at a higher distance or something. But just by regular playing the game, I didn't notice the difference. That's the thing that I want to mention in here, is that median, high or ultra, at least for me, without comparing screenshots, it was pretty much the same, and that is very good. In case you want to improve the performance, you can reduce settings to median at least without losing, that visual quality that sustains the game. Alright, so now that I've talked about performance and a little bit of graphics, let's talk a little bit about the game. So I already talked about Back for Blood in the past when I did try out the beta. And in case you are wondering why this is so similar to Left 4 Dead, this is exactly similar because the developers behind Left 4 Dead are these guys. They no longer belong to Valve or anything, they exit, and they decide to create their spiritual successor of Left 4 Dead, which is exactly, mostly the same game. This is Left 4 Dead with a different game because of Valve, and obviously with newer stuff and a different engine. Of course, this is not using Source Engine like I did told you, this is using Unreal, and there are some newer mechanics like aim down sights, as you could possibly notice already, and there is a card system that, despite at first I was kind of, why do I want that? Why do I want this? Every time you start the level, you are granted to select a couple of cards. Each one are kind of a buff, like for example, more 10% of speed, or more 10% of accuracy, or more 10% of health, or kind of a buff that, for example, if you are dying, every kill recovers 1 HP. But after a couple of levels, the cards that you collect will define the way that you play, alright? And there are also cards against you that happens inside the game that makes the game a little bit different every time you start the same level. So I think I can say this, but each game are not the same, alright? The objectives are the same, the zombie positions obviously they are not, just like on Left 4 Dead. But, you know, the corruption cards and the way that it randomizes, it makes the, you know, each level slightly different depending on, obviously, your teammates, the buffs that they do select, the type of weapons that they do bring. Well, this also happened in Left 4 Dead, of course, but, I mean, the buffs and the corruption cards, the stuff that goes against you in the level, it can get really different comparing to Left 4 Dead. So it's a little bit more deeper, alright? So one of the things that probably I will be disappointed compared to Left 4 Dead is that Left 4 Dead had an awesome mod support. I remember when Left 4 Dead 2 came out, for example, I remember there was a website, and obviously search engine, it is highly customized. There was tons of campaigns online, and I played with a friend of mine that I barely talk to him nowadays, but still, I played so much Left 4 Dead with him, with custom campaigns, and that is stuff that I'm not really expecting to see in this game, because first of all, this is Unreal Engine. This is, I mean, mod support is possible, but I'm not expecting it to happen, because when Valve is included in this type of games, usually the community also gets a lot included with workshop stuff and stuff like that. But for this game, for now, I'm not seeing this, so I'm a little bit afraid that regarding hours of play, this might not bring as much hours of play as Left 4 Dead. But I think it was a good idea for them to include the cards and the corruptions to try to give some, you know, some more hours of gameplay to create a more diverse sensation. Hopefully later, in months or half a year, they include more levels, more campaign levels for free. Let's hope so, at least. But yeah, I think the game, it is pretty good. It's kind of a return of, I would call this Left 4 Dead 3, honestly, because this is an improvement over the ancient Left 4 Deads with a different engine, pretty much more or less the same gameplay with refinements. This is clearly the Left 4 Dead that people have been asking for from the original developers, but unfortunately Valve is not included in the development of the game. So, is this the game good? Well, it depends. For me, I think it is awesome. I think, like I said, for me this is Left 4 Dead. It's the thing that people have been waiting for years now, and I think that's it. I think that's all that I would need to talk. It's Left 4 Dead, guys. I think that's great. Now, the bad part about this is that this is an expensive game if you want to buy it, and honestly, if you just want to have a Left 4 Dead experience, the original one, I think you will find more players and more community modes and more stuff in the Left 4 Dead 2 and the original Left 4 Dead from Valve than playing Back 4 Blood. Alright, that's really the thing. But since the game it is available on Game Pass, and if you are a Game Pass subscriber just like me, I did use the Game Pass version, well, in that case, I must say that it is a huge deal, because at the end of the day, it is kind of free. Alright, you are paying for the Game Pass, but it's like a free game anyway, because it is offered on the Game Pass. Now, the reality it is that I don't know for how much longer it will be available on Game Pass, but let's hope it will stay there for a long time. Enough time for the game to drop price, that in case you are still interested in the game, you can buy it through Epic Store or Steam or any store that you want. Alright, so I think that's all that I want to talk about Back 4 Blood. Hope you keep enjoying the rest of the video, and I do hope to see you soon. Goodbye.
appreciate you having my back.
Give me some cover!
Yeah,
Coming in your own time.